talking hardball, the bull and the better. Talking hardball, part of betting weekly. Handicappers, they're all in the know. Pick some winners and then we say let's go. So come on, it's time to watch the show. We're talking hardball, Ken Griffey's grotesquely swollen jaw. We're talking hardball, over under on the hot dogs. Talking hardball, bring your giant bag of...
Welcome into the latest edition of Betting Weekly Hardball on this Thursday. I'm Doug Kezirian alongside professional handicapper Wes Reynolds. And when we talk baseball on Thursday, we are talking some day games in addition to looking to games coming up at night. And we have three underway right now, one in a rain delay. We'll get into all that, but plenty of to dissect. And Wes, you're the perfect person I want to have on the show because we're going to break down some in-game opportunities and also look ahead to some games that haven't started with some interesting spots. How are you on this Thursday?
I'm okay, Doug. We'll see if Tanner Bybee can get out of this jam here for the Guardians. The day game, one of the two that are currently underway right now, has let a couple in already, much to my chagrin.
So you're on the Guardians. As we look at some games, and we do have a game starting in 10 minutes as well. We'll get to that. So we have three games underway. You mentioned the Guardians, Cleveland hosting the Blue Jays, Toronto up 2-0 with runners on the corners and one out in the third inning. Athletics at the Tigers, Detroit up 3-0, home half of the third as well. Runner on third to maybe go up 4-0 over Springs and Oakland. Detroit a -3 on the spread line, the run line, -120. And then we do have a game that is in the rain delay in the top of the first, Mariners and Twins. So that game, let's call it's going to be rescheduled to 1:45 Central Time, and that game is Twins -134 at home with in that pitching matchup. I'm just all over the place now with Woods Richardson on the bump for them. So anything in those three games that catches your eye?
Yeah, nothing right now. I didn't do anything with the Athletics and the Tigers. Dietrich ends going for the Tigers, so wasn't sure if this was going to be a bullpen game or not, so that kept me out of it. You mentioned I was on the Guardians. I'm actually, I wish I was because I would still have a chance to win. I was on Tanner Bybee under 2.5 recorded earned runs, so that is now dead. It is now 3-0 here. He 2 innings pretty quickly for him, and then got himself into a jam. And then just threw it away, it looks like, or on a pickoff move, a miscommunication with the first baseman there, Manzardo, who already, by the way, has an error in the inning. So already 3-0. Vladimir Guerrero just got hit. This may be a short outing for Tanner Bybee here, as he's already let 3 in and has got 2 on. So nothing for me. When I lose one in a game, I usually don't like to chase something in the same game. So nothing for me in Cleveland.
I would say just devil's advocate. It's not necessarily chasing if you just see something that's different. And like you said, you're probably punting on a game. So do you like how the Blue Jays look? I mean, they're 5 games above 500. I think they're flying under the radar a little bit. So much talk with the Red Sox and the trades. The Yankees obviously stormed out of the gates in their situation. Orioles even grabbed headlines because of how poorly they were playing. So I would imagine this Toronto team maybe has some betting value if you want to break stuff down. I like how they've been playing of late too.
Well, I do as well long term, but not necessarily today is what I'm saying. And what I'm saying is I don't want to do any in play here when I felt had a misread on a game. So I don't want to double down here. I think that's a way to get yourself in debt and a way to get yourself in some big trouble when you just add and get on tilt. And that's something you sometimes got to avoid, even though you're tempted to get involved. There's other games on the schedule and there's other ways to find winners. So I didn't like my read on this first game, and I'm already 0-1 for the day. So we move on.
We move on to Cincinnati, so to speak. But I will say you're usually a guy who likes Gossman. I'm surprised you didn't take a nibble with him.
I didn't today because I liked the way Tanner Bybee had been pitching. He had been, I think, pitching terrific, and the fact that this is a getaway game day where both these teams last game of the series, and then oftentimes, especially when you get both the teams go on the road. Toronto, obviously, they start a series in Boston tomorrow. Cleveland does stay at home against St. Louis, so not as great of a situation. I like it better when both teams are traveling, but you get that getaway game, and it did get bet to the under, by the way, today, and got some pretty good steam overnight and into the morning because it was 8, and then it went to 7.5, and pretty heavily juiced to the under at a lot of places. Like you're talking, minus 125, minus 115, by the way, at Bet Rivers. But when you get to like minus 125, that means it's not that far from going down to 7. So that tells you there was a pretty strong move on the under for this game. So I elected to play the under earned runs on Bybee. Did not work out.
All right, good stuff and good breakdown. I mentioned the Mariners and Twins, a little bit of a rain delay. They will resume action in 40 minutes in Minneapolis. MLB Network televising that, so maybe some interest there because of national television. Twins snapped a 5-game skid. We had pro bettor Chris Massero on the show a couple days ago just talking about how this Twins team kind of stinks. And we were both stunned remembering that they had a 13-game win streak earlier this year, but they've now lost 11 of 12. Woods Richardson on the bump. Hancock going for Seattle. Do you have a philosophy how you typically approach these when you have a start-stop situation in a rain delay? This is strange because it's like one batter into the game or something. We're in the top first, or maybe they just haven't started at all, but still weird that they didn't just move the start time and the pitchers could be out of sorts, so to speak.
Yeah, hasn't started yet. I did play Woods Richardson under 4.5 strikeouts here, thinking that maybe we do get the stop here, and that potentially means you get a starting pitcher pulled early, because if you get a delay, depending on how long that delay is, it might be, I don't know, 15 minutes to a half hour, and then you're going to see that pitcher go back out. But if it goes longer than like an hour, there's usually a pitching change. And plus the fact that Seattle has hit better on the road than they have at home. And Woods Richardson, not really a big strikeout pitcher per se. I believe, what's his average here? 7.9 per 9 innings. So that's kind of, median average at best. And so I did bet the under strikeouts, but I don't really have a philosophy necessarily. I just think every game is different here. So you're a little bit of a slave to the weather gods right now. And that's what we are in Minnesota. As of now, no start, even though it was supposed to go off at 1:10 Eastern, 12:10 Central Time locally there in Minneapolis.
Okay, so we'll keep an eye on that game. I mentioned 2 games coming up here in about a few minutes. You have Phillies visiting the Astros, Rays visiting the Royals. The more interesting matchup is Phil's at the Astros, a little interleague action. Sanchez is going against Hunter Brown, who's really entered the AL Cy Young Award conversation. He's the second favorite, if I remember correctly. Houston, a minus 150 home favorite. That's the only side I would look for this game, but no play for me officially. I just like this Astros team. I talked about it a couple weeks ago in terms of their AL East. It was Tigers and Yankees in a tier, kind of co-favorites. And then after that, it's, the Astros are the ones that captivated me. Would you have a play on this game with Sanchez against Brown?
Yeah, nothing for me. Small lean to the under here. Getaway game, like we were mentioning. Both pitchers have actually been pitching very solidly here. Astros got a nice home streak going, and have really, I think, kind of pulled away in that West. They are going for the sweep here. Been both low-scoring games. It was 1-0 on Tuesday, and then it was 2-0 last night. So I could see another one in order. Was thinking about maybe Christopher Sanchez under 2.5 earned runs, but elected not to go that way. So this was a leave alone for me.
Sounds like you do some solid amount of props as opposed to sides or totals that are maybe old school kind of approach. Why is that, you think? It's just easier to isolate the angle?
Well, a little bit, but a lot of it too is the fact that this stuff moves. This stuff moves very quickly in the overnights, especially the totals. And you have to get those early, and you don't want to be too late. And, it's one thing if like it moves like 5 cents or something. That's not that
Right.
much of a big deal long term. But when these things are moving 20 and 25 cents, I don't want to chase that number necessarily. So I often feel like these pitcher props, especially, you don't get the movement necessarily. Though, it's kind of like when you look at full game sides in something like football or basketball, where you see the full game move, but you might not see the first half move very much, or you might not see the first quarter move very much, or it's certainly not visible. Maybe it's off screen at some different places. So that's kind of my philosophy in terms of how I do these, where I do these pitching props, because they don't move as much. Now, or at least they don't move right away when you see a side and a total move.
Right. And because they're not always necessarily a direct correlation, but I mentioned it's just easier sometimes to isolate. If you think so and so is going to get rocked, you don't have to bet on the other team to win the game because you're also backing on that other team's pitching to kind of be okay. You can just literally isolate the exact outcome you think is going to happen. That's why I think the prop market is more appealing to some. And also just we are comfortable with stats given our involvement with fantasy sports over the years. So that's sort of the summary in that case. Royals and Rays, they're underway. They just started. That's a game we didn't really get a chance to talk about, but we can do some live stuff
Yeah.
if we want. That's Baz and Lorenzen. KC's 4 straight losses. This Tampa team is sneaking up on people. Anything here? Lorenzen's not a guy I want to get behind with KC, especially if they're in a funk here.
Well, this is one I did bet, and I actually did get behind Lorenz, and I bet over 15 and
Yeah.
a half recorded outs. So means he's got to go 5 1/3. Royals trying to, work out and not get swept here. Bullpen is in okay shape. Lorenzen has gone over this, by the way, in 3 straight starts. 3.63 ERA, so okay, but not great. You worry a little bit about the walks, but he hasn't been walking guys a lot in his last few starts, and this is the getaway game. So sometimes you get bats that are a little bit aggressive early on, and you get some quick hacks, and that means you absolutely get some quick outs. And the Rays have been really aggressive too. In the first 2 games of the series, they've swung at about, I think it was 53.5% of the pitches between Chris Bubich and Michael Wacha. And look, it has been working, but this is a getaway day game, and it's going to, I think, get you some quick at-bats for Lorenzen. So he's just got to be a little bit efficient. So I did bet over 15 and a half outs. It could be dangerous, because the Rays are on such a hot streak, really dating back to, over a month now. They've been playing really good ball. But that was my angle, at least for this one.
All right, yeah, and you mentioned we've talked about this Rays team, just that they're just so steady, some solid players across the board, no stars. They've won 4 or 5, including taking the first 2 games in Kansas City, going for the sweep as they round out their series. Rays minus 124. That game just underway, so we are in the top of the first there. Some live baseball coming up in a few minutes. One of the better rivalries in all of baseball: Cubs and Cardinals. Imanaga on the bump for the North Siders. This game at Busch Stadium, though. Palante going for St. Louis. I actually like the Cubs a little bit here. 137 is a little pricey, but I think he's such a good pitcher in so many ways.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Now, I don't usually like to back a guy the first start back from the DL or any type of injured list. That doesn't necessarily mean I want to fade him, but with Shota. But by the way, all 3 of these games have gone over. I did not play the under. I would have leaned that way, even though the market certainly seems to disagree, or certainly there's at least a split in the market. Some books are a little juiced to the under. Some books are a little bit juiced to the over. I think at Bet Rivers over minus 117 to the 9. There is some juice to the under. So this was one of those. I hate to be a broken record, but getaway day game for both of these teams. By the way, both of these teams going on the road too. St. Louis going to Cleveland to start a series over the weekend. Cubs traveling down to Houston to face the Red Hot Astros. So it would have been under. It would have been under or pass for me, even though the market seems to disagree on it. But with the unknown of Shota, coming back. By the way, his last outing was on May 4th against Milwaukee. So it's always interesting. They have these 15-day injured lists when they're out like 45, it seems like. But nothing for me. Nothing for me on this one. I want to see how long Shota goes. Number one, I want to see how effective he's going to be, but I want to see how long he goes. Do they maybe say, okay, let's just, let's go 4 innings. That's why I didn't really look at the props, the recorded outs or the strikeouts or the hits allowed, walks, what have you. There are a lot of different pitcher props that you can bet in these markets. I didn't do anything with this one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the odds makers really know, right? Like that's the problem, so to speak. But it's yeah, I can see where you're going with 9, and but for me, it's Cubs are past. That's not ready to pull the trigger. Okay, so that covers our games about to start and also our late games. It's still 3-0 in Cleveland. Analytics capper Albert Nguyen, who's been on the show a bunch, broke down the Guardians inning. It was like 2 errors, a bunch of nonsense that got the Blue Jays going. So some little league stuff going on out there in Cleveland. I would say the marquee game coming up tonight's on MLB Network. Mets hosting the Braves. Grant Holmes against Griffin Canning. And Chris Massaro earlier in the week talked about, for whatever reason, Braves and Mets have had 9 straight nerfies connect when they play at Citi Field. So scouting, sunset, who knows what the rationale is. Can I interest you in a 10th straight for a nerfie tonight, Wes?
Well, I think that you could. Now, I usually don't play a lot of those Yerfies or Nerfies. It's just not a market that I feel like I have a very good handle on necessarily. But there is an angle I do kind of like in this game. Have not bet it yet, but I'm thinking about getting involved. And that is Grant Holmes over the strikeouts for the Atlanta Braves. Seeing 5.5 minus 118 to the over at Bet Rivers right now. And the guy I think has pretty good stuff, but the Mets don't really have a lot of at bats because Grant Holmes, this is kind of his first full year as a starter. Because remember, he was a reliever for the A's for the last couple of years. Then he went to the Braves as kind of a middle relief guy, and now he's been a starter, and I think he's been a pretty solid one when you really look at his numbers. 4-6 and 15 starts. I don't really look at the win-loss record because there's a lot of randomness there. But a 3.75 ERA, 3.68 on the xFIP, so he's pretty much pitching true to his numbers. 10.2 strikeouts per 9 innings. So I think you have the Mets, maybe the first time through the order, he might have a chance to get 3 or 4. And that's what your goal is when you're betting an over on strikeouts. Can you get 3 or 4 at least through the first time of the order? And 5.5, I think, is very doable for Grant Holmes tonight in New York against the Mets. So that might be the way I would look at it, just the unfamiliarity with the Mets batters here.
Interesting. So I think I'm going to tail this trend. I am going to go nerfy. Let's put a nerfy on the board. I think, look, I mean, it's a weird trend because it changes pitchers. It's not something that's really sort of I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but is it scouting? I don't know. I'm not really ready to go there, but I'll go total runs under a half, which is a nerfy, plus 100. So plus 100, even money bet. We'll make that our play for this game. So marquee game, MLB Network. Why not? Dodgers and Rockies. I always get a kick out of the Dodgers. The last time I was on this show, I talked about the Dodgers team total at Coors was 7.5 and got there with ease. Gomber's going for the Rockies. He can certainly get rocked. Dodgers crush righties. Kershaw, who's pitched pretty well in his career at Coors, minus 315, the Blue Crew on the road. Over under of 12. Now, that obviously has a lot to do with the Dodgers lineup. This Rockies team is okay with the unders on the road. Dodgers run line is tempting. I mean, we all know how they can get hot and they can mash a team like this. It's still minus $2 on the run line. So that's a little apprehensive. But then again, we're talking about arguably the worst team in the history of baseball with now a 18-62 record. Not necessarily good, but they're close to 500 in their last 20 games. I think it's like 18-20 or something like that. They have lost 5 of 6, but a lot of that 18-20 run was sweeping the Marlins and winning 3 of 4 in Washington. So if you take those games out and that you put them up against these good teams like the Dodgers, Rockies are as pitiful as we think.
Yeah, and a weaker than usual lineup for Colorado, by the way, today. No Ryan McMahon, no Hunter Goodman in the lineup today. So, dare I say the Rockies B lineup, but what's their A lineup, really? So, uh, uh, maybe a way to play Kershaw here. He hasn't really been going deep in games so far. Maybe they're working him way back slowly from the injury here, but maybe a lean here because I don't really get involved in a lot of Rockies games. I just don't. They're seemingly unbettable. I see them get steam every day in the market at big prices because maybe it's like, hey, I just got to hit 1 out of 3 and I'm going to make money. And I think there's a lot of bettors that think that way, but I don't like to get involved when a team is scuffling as bad as they are. But would lean actually a little bit if you want to go against them, like Clayton Kershaw under 5.5 hits allowed. Would be certainly I think a way to go here. Just looking at the runs here, heavily juiced to the under at 15.5, like well over $2 in a lot of places. So that tells you that they're not wanting him to go deep in games. They're not wanting him to go, hey, let's try to get him in the 6th or in the 7th. He's rolling here. So under hits allowed at 5.5 might be worth a look. Not something I bet though. So as of now, a pass for me.
So that's an interesting prop because if he's pitching well, that means he's going to throw deep into games, not just Kershaw, but other pitchers. And then he could give up a lot of 2-out hits that wouldn't get the manager off the bench and get the bullpen up. So you could really, he could get rocked in the first inning and be out of the game and give up less than 5.5 hits, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's counterintuitive, I would say at times, but obviously it's correlated to good pitching for the most part. But that's an interesting one, especially if you think he's on a sort of a pitch count.
And he's only gone in past 5 innings once so far this season. That was June 14th against the Giants, where he went 7 innings, only gave up 3 hits, struck out 5. But if you look last time out against the Nats, gave up 5 hits, 2 earned runs, went 5 innings even. Against St. Louis, 1 run, 6 hits, 5 innings even. He only goes 4 2/3 against the Mets, gives up 6 hits. He goes 5 at Cleveland, gives up 6. So that's about right around the number. So it's not like there's a ton of number value necessarily. Like 5.5 is right where it should be. And then you're obviously in a hitter's park, despite the fact that you have that Rockies lineup that's a little bit more poverty than usual without Ryan McMahon or Hunter Goodman in there. So that'd be the way I would play it. But as of now, I'm leaving it alone.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I would look at Dodgers run line, actually. I just think they're going to mash Gomber. And I misspoke, by the way. He's a lefty. So apologies on that, but they mash everyone. But I would be more likely to pull the trigger. I probably would if he had the same numbers, but a righty. I do think the Dodgers thrive in that situation. Giants were threatening the Dodgers in the standings. Then, every time they get close, man, they kind of fall back a little bit. So Dodgers are 5.5 games up, thanks to a 3-game win streak. Giants have lost back-to-back. Got the Marlins wrapping things up in the Bay Area. Birdsong's going for San Fran, $1.82. So solid favorite on the money line. Marlins, the comeback, 155. Pretty low total for Junk and Birdsong. What a name for a pitcher, though, Junk. That's what you want, right? It's like Ed Harris in Major League. Like that's the kind of name you want. The junk ball that he has, Jason Junk. But he's been great except for 1 outing at Pittsburgh. He pitched against San Francisco earlier this year, 4 shutout innings at home. The spot says San Francisco, but I caution there. I'm reluctant to get involved here, especially at this price.
Well, and Junk really hasn't been Junk necessarily. He's
Right.
only had 7 starts so far. And, they're kind of working him in. So he hadn't really gone like deep necessarily in the starts, but he has only walked 2 in 7 starts, 2 total batters in 7 starts. So he doesn't walk a lot of guys. So he doesn't give a lot of free passes. And that's obviously very good. And 9 strikeouts per 9 innings, I think, is relatively respectable. 5 against the Braves, 4 against the Nats, last 2 starts. Did face these guys earlier in the year on May 30th in Miami. Only went 4 innings, but allowed 3 hits and struck out 5. No earned runs, no walks or anything like that. So Jensen Junk has actually not been too bad for these Marlins. And this is a guy, the Marlins are going to be interesting at the deadline because they are going to get calls on Eddie Cabrera, who pitched yesterday. They are going to get calls on Sandy Alcantara. So Junk might be one of those guys that step in. So they want to see. They don't want to, I think, overextend him, but they want to see what he has if he could kind of step in. He's got some good stuff here. So, maybe over 3.5 strikeouts might be worth the look here on Jansen Junk, where I think he could go longer, and this is a getaway day game. So you're seeing it get bet to the under a little bit, where it was 8 overnight. You're seeing some 7.5s start to emerge out there on the board. So, I think that could be a way here. I think that this could be a very low scoring game, and maybe Junk gets off to a good start, and they say, okay, we'll give you another inning, because that's what they kind of do with these guys, that they're not yet full-time starters, but they have envisions of them potentially being. So Jansen Junk over 3.5 strikeouts, I think at least is worth a look.
I think that sounds pretty good to me. I'm optimistic with how he can handle this San Francisco lineup. Not the most intimidating. I like betting on Birdsong typically, but I don't think that. I mean, the Giants just aren't playing good ball right now, and I just don't want to get involved against Junk in this matchup. So that's something that really sort of resonates. Let's keeping track on games going on. Just a reminder: please like and subscribe to the podcast. We are a free show right now, but that's the currency we need to help with the Google Analytics. So please do your part to help us out if you do not mind. And you also get updates and alerts when the pod or the show is coming up. And it's a nice reminder. So it is helpful in that regard. And speaking of helpful, the newsletter is fantastic. I encourage everyone to go sign up. bettingweeklystudios.com. You have tons of betting tips, soccer preview, tennis brackets. Wimbledon is coming up this weekend. And there's Bet Rivers odds everywhere, links to these shows under the Big Betting Weekly Studios umbrella. So a lot of good content. And I mentioned Wimbledon. Subscribe there. And because Friday, tomorrow, 5 a.m. Eastern, we have a special live show with Nigel, Rory, and Tim breaking down the bracket draw at the All England Club. As always, live shows available on demand on YouTube. So thanks to everyone really supporting the cause, so to speak, as we are a new show here, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, every single weekday. And then coming up top of the hour, show that Wes has appeared on and I'm hosting today, and that is Betting Weekly Fast Break. So a little hoop show, even after the NBA playoffs. We have going to talk some Rookie of the Year odds now that the draft was last night. Also look ahead to 2 games in the W and also 5 games tomorrow, and then some other futures indexes. So a lot of good stuff coming up in the basketball show. Again, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern. So keeping tabs on things going on right now, Wes. Still 3-0 Toronto. That game in the bottom of the 4th in Cleveland. Detroit also up 3-0, still in the 5th over the Athletics. And Philly and Houston and scoreless 1. Same for Tampa and Kansas City. So you were talking about some unders in those games. Cubs got a runner on in the top of the 1st, but double play ball ended the inning. We're now in the bottom of the 1st, 1 out. Imanaga with a 10-pitch at bat with win for the Cardinals with, again, 1 out. So second batter at the bottom of the 1st. The live total has already shifted to 8.5. So the 9.5 was the closing number. After the first half inning, the market moved to 8.5. So shaved an entire run off, which feels just so drastic. You touched on some unders that had caught your eye, Wes, and some of these games are at least starting out that way. What do you make of any action potentially right now in the in game?
Yeah, a good start for Lorenzen, actually, in the first inning. We played the recorded outs. Wish we would have played the strikeouts maybe too, because he struck out the side in the first inning and has the first batter in the second inning down 0-2. So good start. And like I say, you get quick hacks sometimes in these day games where it's like they know they got to travel. Yeah, they're trying to win, but you will get some impatient hitters. I think in these games. So that's why you'll see the starters to be able to go a little bit longer, and why you see, I think, so many of these games at least get bet to the under, because that's just what they do when you have these quick hacks, and especially when you get both teams having to get on a plane after the game, go on a road, you're starting a fresh weekend series. So, Definitely good starts for the unders if you're on this early slate here at the 11 Pacific time games.
I want to pull on that thread a little bit. So I know you touched on it earlier. I probably should have addressed it then. So you think, has it been proven over time that there are fewer pitches seen and at bats with teams getting ready to hit the road? Is that statistically something we typically see?
Doug, I mean, I don't have like a full breakdown where I have I have like the evidence that I can approve. So I guess you could call it hearsay, but it's kind of just like eyeballing. It's kind of just
Yeah,
like experience going through these. So I don't. I wish I had that data readily available. But you just when you follow this year after year, you see these situations. Now nothing's exact. Sometimes you'll get a game where it's 15-13, or you'll get some wild game, but a lot of times you do get these unders when you got the getaways for both the teams going on the road to start a fresh series on Friday, and it's just kind of going with experience here, and even in this era where everything is kind of quantifiable and everybody's quant guys and math guys and modelers and whatnot, there is kind of good old fashioned just bare bones handicapping where it's like you see situations and you recognize them, and that's what I think you have here with some of these like early baseball games where they're the getaways for the unders.
look, I think it's totally fair to have an anecdotal reference point. I just wanted to ask specifics because um, I agree. I mean, we had Albert Nguyen on the show talking about Friday nights. He likes betting home teams, thinks there's energy in the crowd going into the weekend, new series. And then Mondays, he likes road teams, just the start of the week, a little bit more value on the dog. It's just we all have our preferences over the years. And again, sometimes it's anecdotal, sometimes it's statistically proven, but it's worth mentioning. And, that is something to note. Cubs and Cardinals, Imanaga got out of the first with a deep fly out and then an out to finish off and strand a runner on first. So Cubs and Cardinals scoreless through one. And again, that game closed 9.5. Okay. That was 9.5 under -120 range, a scoreless first, and it's now 7.5. What do you make of that? Overjuiced a little bit, but 2 runs shaved off the total thanks to a scoreless first inning.
Is that you're referring to Kansas City, right?
No, that's St. Louis and Cubs.
Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, because Shota just finished off the inning. He does go
Right.
20 pitches, does give up the one hit, but did strike out Contreras to conclude. And then Pallant went a very quick first inning, 9 pitches here. But now getting into the PCA, Dansby Swanson, Matt Bush, part of the lineup. PCA obviously has been terrific and is very much an MVP candidate in the National League, even though Ohtani still remains the favorite. So, not really surprised here, but I don't know if I would follow that understeam just because I wonder if and when it's going to go bad for Shota. It may not. It may not go bad for him, but this is the first start off the DL, and I don't like to bet those guys very often. More often than not, I'll be against, but I wasn't against at least today.
Mentioned some unders in Kansas City and Houston. Both those games have gone to the bottom of the second, scoreless. Live updated totals pretty low. Philly and Houston, again, just in the second inning, 5.5. Okay. Scoreless game in the bottom second, 5.5 is your over under. 8 is the new price on the over under between the Rays and Royals. That game was 10, I believe, if I remember correctly, going into that game. They're just bottom second. You have a 5.5 for an over under. But meanwhile, Bybee has settled down in Cleveland. Gossman's still throwing rocks, and Detroit's still leading 3-0. So no score changes throughout this entire
Yeah.
half hour of the show. It's 3-0 in 2 games, scoreless in the other 2 games, and now Cubs and Cards also scoreless as that game got going since we started. And you mentioned PCA is batting, for the Cubbies, the 5th spot. That's kind of rare to see, and he lines out the first out in the second. So both pitchers look like they've settled down. You mentioned under steam, but now it's a much different price at 7.5. I agree. I would not get involved, but man, it is tempting because this does look like both pitchers could be settled in. Can I interest you in a maybe first 5 live under if you think the pitchers are settled down? Although you have mentioned that you're not, thrilled about betting Imanaga off an injury stint.
Yeah, I'm going to leave that alone. But just eyeballing the whole early slate here, you mentioned. Let me go back to Cleveland really quickly, where Bybee is probably settled in now. He may only be going 5. He's already at 76 pitches, and just 1 out in the 5th. But Gaussman threw 4 at 60, so that's telling you probably he's at least going 6. And unless barring disaster, he's at least going 6. So that's why you see these unders get so pronounced. Like Lorenzen, 24 pitches through 2 innings. We'll see how he gets through the first time of the order. You've got some pretty low pitch counts for these guys. And, then it becomes all about bullpen usage. And bullpen usage is a lot of the reason why I make some of these pitcher props, because you want to see, okay, which bullpen has been taxed. And we've gone over this on this program where it's like, okay, these guys have worked 3 or 4 days, so they're probably not going to be available. So like the bullpens that I thought were going to be a little bit taxed today were the Twins, the Marlins, and the Mets. So those are ones that you might want to look at for the starters. And then you got to obviously evaluate each pitcher accordingly in a separate vacuum. But, they want to stretch these starters out, especially the experienced ones. Maybe not as much Shota in his first time back from the injured list, where it's like, okay, we get 5, that's all we need to see, and then let's let the bullpen take care of it if the bullpen's pretty well rested. So these starters, though, they want to stretch out because they want to save that bullpen, because you got a fresh series going. The last thing you want to do is burn out your bullpen when you got a full weekend series going up.
And just a reminder, we want to explain some of this is the over-under for the game will drop what I would determine drastically after 1 inning, because the bottom of the lineup is also coming up. So that's something to keep in mind. You get through the bulk of the order, just statistically with batting averages and everything, they're more inclined to score with those top guys. And that's a factor. And so that's another reason why, if you can get that through that unscathed. Now, PCA makes the Cubs sort of second inning a little different, but typically MVP candidates aren't batting 5th in the lineup. So you're going to get a drop off after the first 3 or 4 guys, and that changes everything. So that's something to keep in the back of your mind as you look at in-game adjustments and things like that. So some would say, hey, the line was 8.5 before the game. It's now 6.5. I'm going to bet over after just 1 inning. Well, you're also getting the worst bats up, unless there's a messy scoreless half inning, and then you're going to get, the 7th batter or something batting the 2nd. So Adam Osimo saying raise money line and under is what he likes. Certainly can't fault him for that. So we always want to get you involved in the conversation. So we appreciate everyone joining in, because it is how we make sure we tailor the shows to address our audience. And we want, whether things you like, whether things you dislike, feedback across the board. So that's something to keep in mind. Shane, who was a big backer of the Pacers all series in the NBA Finals, says Royals bet the under. So he likes the under. He's kind of backing with you, Wes, in terms of Lorenzen.
Yeah, Michael Lorenzen, very good start. Quick hacks really on both sides here. Shane Baz, by the way, 2 strikeouts of 3 in the bottom of the 2nd. So he's already got 24 pitches through 2 innings, same as Lorenzen. So very good start for both of these teams. By the way, this was a high total too. This was 10.5. And it closed 10 in some spots, but 10.5, I saw a little bit this morning because the Rays have been so hot, and very, very slow start. So wouldn't disagree with Shane's under assessment.
Yeah, so far so good in that game. Steve from Lynn says, hey guys, great show. Thanks for the Mariners hit the other night. That was in Minnesota. That was Steve was listening to Chris Macero. Pro Better was on the show a couple days ago. Gave out that game. Now they led 5-0. It was sweaty, Steve. 5-0. Twins responded, tied the game at 5. Mariners do get the W. What about Kyle Cutler, who says, I like Ohtani RBI ladder, which is always fun, especially at Coors Field. So you get Ohtani and that Dodgers lineup. I mentioned the other day the team total, things like that. Ohtani, total runs scored, and then you can also do RBIs for Ohtani. And I'm just going to do a search here. And survey says that's a run scored. And I would say you can do, I don't see it here at Bet Rivers as I'm scrolling around. So you can bet total RBIs by the players. You have Freddie Freeman at a half over -132. Otani -139 to record an RBI against Gomber and the Rockies today. Any interest at least in in at least one RBI?
I could see it. In all fair disclosure, I don't do very many hitter props. I think that that's a tougher market for me, and I think as a bettor, with so many things out there on the menu, I think you want to know what's on the menu, but that doesn't mean you have to necessarily order everything on the menu. So I think hitter props for me, just if I don't think I really have a good read on that. I think that's a lot of variance. That's a little bit more lottery ticket betting for me personally. And now some people are very successful at that. And if you're successful at it, keep doing it. And if you're not successful, then don't do it. So I could see that happening, but I hesitate to get out a recommendation when I don't really bet that market.
Okay. Cubs are on the board. Michael Busch at Busch Stadium, home run to right field. Chicago leads 2-0. Sorry, 1-0. I apologize, with 2 outs in the second inning. All the other games untouched. We still scoreless in Houston. We're still scoreless in Kansas City. And meanwhile, Toronto still 3-0 and Detroit still 3-0. So not a lot of action since we've been on the show, but a lot of things to consider. So Wes, I know you looked at some leans, things like that. My only official play is the Nerfy between the Braves and Mets. That's at Citi Field. That is +100. Anything stand out to you that you want to go down as an official player?
Yeah, let's go Grant Holmes over 5.5 strikeouts for the night games. I know not very many to get to necessarily, being that we have a very heavy day card and only one real night game tonight, and that's up at Citi Field in Flushing, Queens. But Grant Holmes over 5.5 strikeouts. And let's go Jackson Junk over 3.5 strikeouts as well. Give somebody something for the afternoon.
I like that, over 3.5 Ks, keeping an eye on things as well in the live game. So, all right, man, good stuff as always. We have 3 official plays, 2 from Wes, 1 from me, on this relatively slow baseball day here for Betting Weekly Hardball. Again, we are every weekday. That's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And coming up top of the hour, Sarah's going to join me for Betting Weekly Fast Break. And we're going to react to last night's draft with maybe some Rookie of the Year odds, minus money right now for Cooper Flagg, understandably. But are we going to be looking at statistics, usage, or overall talent? Because other rookies will certainly have more opportunity than Flagg figures to have in Dallas. But all that and much more. We got 2 games in the W as well. So for Wes Reynolds and everyone else behind the scenes, appreciate you watching. I'm Doug Kezirian, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.